ladies.
You know perfectly well what the problem is, young man. This is a private lake!
Oh, I thought the sign said.
What Karen Wellington and her precious homeowners association fined me for just for fishing with my grieving daughter. They had no idea who they were messing with. I had 4 million reasons to push back and more than enough spite to unleash every single one of them. If you're watching this from your phone, hiding out in the bathroom to avoid another soul-draining HOA meeting, drop a comment and tell me your secret hideout. I promise you, this story will keep you locked in till the end. My name is Remy Thornfra.
My story? Up until 2 months ago, I was living what most people would call the American dream. I'd spent 15 years building a career in venture capital and financial investments, eventually cashing out of multiple tech startups with enough to retire comfortably at 42. But life has a cruel way of reminding you that money doesn't solve everything. My wife Rachel passed away last year after a brutal battle with cancer, leaving me alone to raise our 14-year-old daughter, Solen. The grief nearly broke us. The only thing that brought even a sliver of peace was fishing, the last thing the three of us did together before Rachel's health took that final, irreversible turn. So when I decided we needed a fresh chapter, I searched for a home near water, somewhere quiet, somewhere we could begin to mend. Lakeside Estates checked every box: elegant homes, strong schools, and a serene 6-acre lake tucked right in the heart of the neighborhood. The realtor did mention a homeowners association, but brushed it off as the usual stuff. Lawns, paint colors, nothing major. I should have paid more attention when she paused before adding, "The HOA president, Karen Wellington, is very committed to protecting property values." At the time, I didn't think twice. I dealt with strong personalities my whole career. How bad could one overzealous neighbor really be? I got my answer one still Saturday morning in April. Solen and I had been fishing off the community dock for nearly an hour. It was the first time I'd seen her genuinely smile in weeks. She had just reeled in her second bluegill and was gently removing the hook when a shrill voice sliced through the morning calm. "Excuse me, but what exactly do you think you're doing?" Karen Wellington had arrived. The woman approaching us looked to be in her late 50s, dressed head to toe in what I could only assume was top-shelf athleisure. Her highlighted blonde hair was styled in the unmistakable "I need to speak to the manager" cut, and she carried a sleek tablet like it was a badge of authority. The expression on her face was one of pure offense, like she'd just caught us spray painting her name on a statue. "Good morning," I said, forcing a calm, friendly tone. "Just out here fishing with my daughter." I extended a hand. "I'm Real Thorncraftoft. We moved into the house on Sycamore Drive a couple months ago." She didn't acknowledge the handshake. Instead, she began stabbing at her tablet with sharp, impatient taps.
Tall and stiffened beside me. "There must be some mistake," I said, still trying to keep the peace. "The realtor told us fishing was one of the amenities. It's why we chose this place." Karen's thin-lipped smile didn't budge. "The rule was amended last month. All residents were notified via email. Not knowing doesn't excuse you from following the rules." She turned her screen toward me, displaying a document titled "Amendment to Recreational Use of Community Lake." The approval date was from 4 weeks ago. "We never received that," I replied. "I personally handle all communications. Karen said with smug certainty. The email was sent to every household. Maybe check your spam folder? Though I can't be held responsible if residents don't read official updates. I clenched my jaw but kept my voice measured. May I ask why fishing was suddenly banned? This lake is clearly stocked. I can see bass swimming right there. She glanced at our gear, then back up with visible distaste. Environmental and safety concerns. Hooks can harm wildlife. Also, we've had complaints about the smell of bait disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of the lake. Some people like to drink their morning coffee without seeing that. Her eyes lingered on our small tackle box like it was a biohazard. Something about her tone shifted my perspective. It wasn't just about policy. We're extremely careful, I said. Solon and I practice catch and release, and we always clean up after ourselves. Her expression hardened. Mr. Thorncraft-Toft, perhaps you don't yet understand how things operate here. Lakeside Estates maintains a certain standard. This isn't a public pond. Longtime residents expect a certain atmosphere. Her eyes flicked to Solon, then back to me. Sometimes, newer residents struggle to adjust, especially if they're used to different types of communities. The implication landed like a slap. My fists clenched, but before I could speak, I heard Solon sniffle. Tears welled in her eyes. This lake had been our tiny sliver of peace. Now it was tainted. We'll pack up, I said quietly, wrapping an arm around her. Please, email me the fine and the updated regulations. Karen's smirk returned like a prize ribbon.
Excellent. I'm glad we understand each other. And do check your inbox more carefully, Mr. Thorncraft-Toft. We wouldn't want any more misunderstandings. She spun on her spotless sneakers and glided away, barely bending the grass. As we gathered our things, Solon wiped her cheeks. Dad, why was she so mean? We weren't hurting anyone. I didn't have an answer she needed to hear, not at 14. Some people love rules more than they love people, sweetheart, I said softly. Let's go home and eat lunch. Later that day, I checked every folder in my inbox. Nothing about a fishing ban. That's when I decided to look deeper into our HOA, and what I found was eye-opening. Karen Wellington had ruled as HOA president for 8 straight years. A day job? Owner of a boutique real estate agency specializing in high-end neighborhood listings. I also found social media posts of Karen herself, hosting lakeside cocktail parties right here. Loud music, catered food, guests everywhere. No sign of environmental concerns then, but the biggest surprise came buried in the HOA bylaws. The lake was officially designated as common property. Who really owns the lake? The lake, as it turned out, was listed as a shared amenity, belonging equally to all residents. There was no legal language giving the HOA unilateral authority over its use. That evening, I stood at my window staring out toward the lake as the sun dipped low. Karen was there, clustered with a group of well-dressed friends at the gazebo. They sipped wine and laughed, clearly enjoying the lakeside setting she claimed needed protecting from families like mine. So, this is how it's going to be, I muttered to myself. All right, but first, I need to find out who actually owns this water. The very next morning, I bumped into an older man walking his dog near our house. He introduced himself as Merrick Henderson, a retired attorney who lived just a few doors down. When I mentioned the incident with Karen, his pleasant expression immediately clouded. "Ah, so you've met our neighborhood monarch," he said with a humorless chuckle. "Let me guess, she quoted some regulation from her holy tablet and hit you with a fine." I nodded.
She's been treating this place like a private kingdom for years. Most folks just pay and stay quiet. Merrick looked around carefully and lowered his voice. "But if you're interested in learning how deep this goes, come by for coffee sometime. I've got files stories too. I took him up on that offer that same afternoon. Merrick's home was warm and lined with law books, photos of what looked like old legal colleagues, and framed letters. Over strong, excellent coffee, he laid out what he knew. "Here's what most people miss," Merrick said, sliding a thick folder across his dining table. "The HOA doesn't own the lake. Meridian Development Corporation does. They were the original developers, and they leased lake rights to the HOA for 30 years. He tapped a page with a highlighted section. "And that lease, it expires in less than 2 months." That stopped me in my tracks. "What happens after it expires?" I asked. "Well, Meridian can either renew the lease, sell the lake to the HOA, or sell it to someone else altogether," Merrick explained. "Most residents assume the HOA owns everything, but that's just not the case." He leaned in. "Now here's the kicker. I've heard whispers. Meridian is strapped for cash and trying to sell off assets quickly. Karen knows this." Over the next hour, Merrick and I dug through public filings. What we found painted a disturbing picture of manipulation. Karen had been using her position to covertly acquire properties across the neighborhood. Through a web of shell companies connected to her real estate firm, she snatched up homes after forcing owners to sell, usually after being buried under HOA citations and fines. And now she was eyeing a far bigger prize. "She's been in talks with Meridian," Merrick said. "Not on behalf of the HOA, on behalf of her private company. Word is, she wants to buy the lake outright, restrict resident access, and build luxury homes on the shoreline." It clicked. The fishing ban wasn't about hooks or wildlife. It was about control. Phase 1 of a larger plan. That evening, Merrick introduced me to another longtime resident, Samuel Washington, a retired bank owner. Dignified, composed, and sharp as ever, Samuel had crossed paths with Karen too, and not favorably. He invited us into his study the next night. There, he pulled up a database of HOA actions he'd personally tracked for over a decade. "I started this just to stay organized," Samuel said, gesturing to the spreadsheets. "But soon, I noticed patterns." The data was damning. Homeowners of color received citations at 3 times the rate of their white neighbors. Newer residents were fined for issues that older homeowners weren't. Properties that sold below market due to violations often ended up in the hands of LLCs tied to Karen. She never buys them directly. She uses companies like Lakeside Investments, Wellington Holdings, Sierra Vista Properties. But they all trace back to her, if you follow the paper trail long enough. He showed us 6 homes purchased this way in the past 5 years. All followed the same playbook. Pile-on violations, drive down value, scoop up the property, make cosmetic upgrades, then resell at a premium. Merrick nodded grimly. The lake is her final move. Meridian, we learned, had been teetering financially for years. Over-leveraged during the last housing boom, they'd quietly sold off land parcels to stay afloat. The lake was one of their last remaining assets, unencumbered and valued at around $300,000. Samuel added, "And now with loosened environmental regulations and her contacts in City Hall, Karen could get permits approved. 6, maybe 8 high-end homes on that shoreline? That's easily 7 to 8 million in profit." I leaned forward, my interest peak. This was no longer just about principle. It was about opportunity. I asked them for more on Meridian's financials. As a former venture capitalist, I could smell a distressed asset from a mile away. Over the next few days, Samuel connected me with former banking colleagues. The picture became clearer. Meridian had maxed out their credit lines, funding a failed commercial plaza. Major tenants pulled out during the pandemic,
leaving them exposed. They were liquidating quietly to avoid collapse. Meanwhile, Merrick was organizing small gatherings with fed-up neighbors. We met in discreet, rotating spots: Samuel's house, the library, a friend's bakery. The stories people shared were chilling.
Karen fined me for having excessive Christmas lights, the same ones I've had for 15 years, just days after I spoke against her at a council meeting,
said James Morris, a retired teacher.
My foster kids got banned from the community pool,
said Maria Gonzalez.
Karen said they were being too loud, but really, her grandkids just wanted to swim and didn't want to share.
Another resident, Diana Winters, a young widow, told us how Karen personally led a so-called mosquito inspection into her backyard.
2 days later, I had 5 violations. Things my neighbors had too but weren't cited for. When I pointed that out, Karen said maybe I wasn't the right fit for this community.
Each story followed the same playbook: isolate opposition, pile on pressure, drive them out, and buy low. Samuel set up a secure messaging group so residents could share safely without fear of retaliation. It felt like we were forming an underground resistance in our own neighborhood. As for me, I began investigating Karen's personal finances. I knew how to comb through business filings, land trusts, and tax records.
Karen Wellington's carefully polished image of success masked a far more precarious reality. Wellington Properties was heavily leveraged. Karen had opened multiple lines of credit against her existing assets, likely to maintain her extravagant lifestyle and bankroll her aggressive expansion efforts. If her plans to acquire the lake property collapsed, she wouldn't just miss out on a profit, she'd be in deep financial trouble. She's not doing this just for gain, I told Merrick and Samuel during one of our strategy meetings. This is survival. According to these financial records, she's in way over her head. The lake development isn't just a project, it's her financial lifeline. That realization changed everything. We were no longer up against a petty tyrant. We were confronting someone in a fight for economic survival. That made her unpredictable and vulnerable. At Samuel's suggestion, I met with Robert Chen, a seasoned real estate broker with inside knowledge of both the lake property and the local market. We met at a coffee shop 20 minutes outside the neighborhood to ensure discretion. Karen's been trying to cobble together financing to buy the lake for around $300,000, Robert confirmed in a hushed tone. Meridian Development is in free fall. They're bleeding cash and desperate to close quickly. They gave her a 60-day exclusive negotiation window, but if a better offer with immediate funding lands, they'll jump. Then Robert revealed something even more compelling. Karen's entire real estate empire was a facade. Wellington Properties looks slick on paper, he said, but she's stretched thin. She's been leaning on her HOA status and social ties to project success. Truth is, she's 3 slow months from collapse. That's why she's clinging to this lake deal. Armed with this intel, I began to strategize. As a venture capitalist, distressed but high-potential assets were my specialty. And this lake property was exactly that. I had the capital to make a strong, all-cash offer, something a financially strained firm like Meridian couldn't ignore. The only question was when to strike. Wait until she's all in, Samuel advised. Let her announce the special assessment. Let her stake her reputation on this project. Then we hit, Merrick agreed. The more she invests, financially and politically, the harder the fall. And the more likely the community turns on her once they realize the truth. As our group expanded, we kept our endgame secret. Outwardly, we appeared to be just another cluster of frustrated residents protesting HOA overreach. Karen knew we were meeting, evidenced by a sudden uptick in rule enforcement targeting us, but she had no idea what we were truly planning. With Robert's help, I arranged a discreet meeting with Tom Branson, the Meridian executive overseeing the lake property deal. We met in a private conference room at a downtown law office, far from the prying eyes of Lakeside Estates. Tom didn't mince words.
We gave Wellington Properties a 60-day exclusive, he said, after initial pleasantries. But there's a clause. We can consider other offers if they close fast. Karen's still scrambling for financing, but we need the cash yesterday. What's her offer? I asked. 300,000 paid over 18 months with a convoluted financing structure, he said, clearly frustrated. Our CFO wants non-core assets gone now so we can shore up downtown development. I leaned forward. I can offer $350,000, all cash, close in 7 days. Tom's eyes widened. That would absolutely get the board's attention, he said, surprised by the directness. But, he warned, Karen has friends in city government. She won't take this quietly. I'm counting on it, I replied with a smile. 2 days later, I had a preliminary agreement, pending only a standard environmental assessment, easily finished within the week. To maintain anonymity, I made the offer through a shell entity, Thornycroft Holdings LLC. Unless Karen personally dug into the LLC registration, she'd never link it to me. As our movement gained traction, Karen apparently caught wind. Suddenly, I began receiving violation notices for absurd infractions: improper weed control, unauthorized landscaping, mailbox height discrepancies. Even my garage door, painted to HOA specs, was cited for being the wrong shade of taupe. The fines piled up fast. $100 here, $200 there. In just 2 weeks, I'd racked up nearly $2,000. When I tried to appeal, my paperwork mysteriously vanished. Hearings were cancelled, decisions denied. It was clear Karen was weaponizing HOA bureaucracy to pressure me. Then came something worse. Sen had left her bike in the driveway briefly while running inside. Within 15 minutes, a violation notice appeared on our door, with time-stamped photos. Someone was actively watching our home. The pattern of harassment became undeniable. Anyone seen near our group was targeted. Maria Gonzalez got a citation for her lawn being 1/4 inch too high, measured by Karen herself. James Morris was fined for a bird feeder that had stood for 10 years. Diana Winters received a notice because her recycling bin was 6 inches too close to her garage. It was a full-scale intimidation campaign. But instead of driving people away, Karen was fueling the fire. Every absurd fine brought another resident into our messaging group. By the 3rd week, we had voices from nearly 30 households, over a quarter of the community. The breaking point came when my daughter came home in tears. "The kids at school say we're bad for the neighborhood," she sobbed. "Brianna said her mom told her we're lowering property values." I discovered that Brianna's mom was a close ally of Karen on the HOA board. Now the bullying had reached my child. That night,
I'm thinking of selling, I admitted. This is hurting her too much. That's exactly what Karen wants, Merrick replied. She's done this to at least 6 families, drives them out with fines, then buys their homes cheap through her connections. Don't let her win. He was right. Leaving would be surrendering, and worse, teaching my daughter to run from bullies. That same evening, I got word. The environmental report came back clean. Meridian's board accepted my offer. The deal was ready to finalize. Later, while reviewing HOA bylaws, I discovered a bombshell: Karen's proposed special assessment. The $50 monthly fee to fund lake upgrades required 75% community approval, not a simple majority as she'd claimed. She was breaking the HOA's own rules, banking on no one noticing. That was the moment it all came together. "They've dragged my daughter into this," I said aloud, shutting my laptop. "Time to show them what it means to pick a fight with someone trained to dismantle broken systems." The next morning, I withdrew $350,000 from my accounts, 15% more than Karen's offer. Samuel offered to loan me an additional $50,000 for leverage. Within 48 hours, all paperwork was signed. The lake, all 6 acres, including a 10-foot buffer zone, belonged to me. Not Karen, not the HOA. The timing was poetic. The next day, Karen hosted a special HOA meeting to unveil her grand vision for the lake. She'd hired architects to produce renderings, Plans that included reducing the lake size by 20% to build a members-only lounge, eliminating key fishing spots. Only Merrick and Samuel knew her vision was already obsolete. Karen pushed for an emergency special assessment, $50 per household monthly, framed as vital for lake maintenance. In truth, it was her war chest. She launched into a slick PowerPoint titled Elevating Lakeside Estates. Her tone was polished, her language aspirational. She promised increased property values, prestige, and community unity. She didn't mention her company would develop and sell the new lakefront homes. Then, the character attacks began. Without naming me, Karen warned of outsiders who don't share our values and financially unstable individuals spreading division. Samuel stood to defend me, only to be smeared. Karen brought up a resolved IRS audit from his past, twisting it into a character attack. If Mr. Washington wants to lecture us on financial prudence, she said sweetly, perhaps he should start by paying his taxes. The room fell silent. Later,
I never thought a simple piece of paper could ruin a perfectly good morning. But there it was, bright pink, tucked under the windshield wiper like a slap in the face. I froze. My heart skipped as I yanked it free. Bold black letters screamed, $150 fine. Driveway violation. What? My stomach dropped. This was our driveway. I looked around in disbelief, half expecting a hidden camera crew to pop out and yell, "Gotcha!" But no, just the quiet hum of sprinklers, birds chirping, morning light cutting through the trees. I stormed back inside, waving the paper like a flag of war. "Dad!" I shouted. "You need to see this!" My father, Thomas Reynolds, looked up from his coffee. A senior loan officer at First National Bank, he was no stranger to rules and numbers. Still, his brow furrowed as he read the notice. "This makes no sense," he muttered. Section 7.3 of the Pine Crest Gardens HOA bylaws prohibits more than 2 vehicles in a residential driveway at a time. You had 5? I blinked. He was right. Last night had been Jenny's graduation party. A few aunts and uncles had stayed over, their cars lined up neatly, in our driveway, not even on the street. No one had complained. Until now. Mom shuffled in wearing her bathrobe, reading over Dad's shoulder. "That's ridiculous," she said. "It's our property." Dad stood up, grabbed his phone. "I'm calling the HOA." He put it on speaker. "Pine Crest Gardens HOA. This is Karen Matthews." A clipped, cool voice said. Confident. Condescending. "This is Thomas Reynolds at 428 Maple Drive," Dad said. "We received a violation notice for parking in our own driveway. There must be a mistake." Her short laugh made my skin crawl. "No mistake, Mr. Reynolds. Section 7.3 is very clear. 5 cars. $150 fine. These were overnight guests, a family celebration. Surely there's an exception for special occasions. Rules are rules, Mr. Reynolds." Her voice hardened. If we allowed everyone to do whatever they wanted, the neighborhood would look like a used car lot. The fine is due in 10 days, or it doubles. "Is there a process to appeal this?" Dad asked calmly. "You can try at the next board meeting," Karen replied. "But I should mention I'm the HOA president. I personally documented your violation. The evidence is quite clear." Click. Silence. A chill ran through me. I moved to the window, peeked through the blinds. "Dad," I whispered, "I think she's watching us." Across the street, a woman in designer athletic wear stood in her driveway. Sunglasses, phone in hand, staring straight at our house. Dad joined me. "Karen Matthews," he said. "Moved in 6 months ago. Elected president last month. Never even spoke to her. Until now." That afternoon, Dad dug up the HOA agreement we'd signed 3 years ago when we moved in. Sure enough, the driveway rule was real. Page 37 of a 50-page document none of us had read that closely. This is insane, I said. Why would anyone care about cars in a driveway for one night? Some people like power, Dad said quietly. That's all this is. He looked down at the fine again. Let's pay it for now, but I want to know who's really running this place. The next morning, another pink slip. Improper lawn maintenance. Grass exceeds 3.5 inches. Fine. $75 Dad had mowed it 4 days ago. I ran inside with the paper. She's targeting us. Dad didn't even look surprised. I figured she might, he said. This is harassment. Should we call a lawyer? Mom asked, pacing. Not yet, Dad replied, eyes gleaming. I stayed up researching last night, found something interesting. The HOA is planning a big renovation. They're applying for a $1.2 million loan. So, I asked. So that loan needs to be approved in the next month. And guess which bank they applied to? My eyes widened. First National. He nodded. And guess who's been assigned to review their application? A slow smile spread across my face. Sometimes, Dad said, the universe balances things out. At that moment, Karen strolled past our house, phone out, bending down to measure our lawn. She had no idea what she'd started. Over the next few days, the pink slips multiplied. Garden gnome, unapproved decoration, wind chimes, excessively noisy, hose improperly stored, mailbox, one shade too dark, total $425. But it wasn't just us anymore. Mr. Jackson next door came by holding his own pink slip. She's just getting started, he warned. His son's basketball hoop, up for 5 years, had been deemed a hazard. Ordered removed. The Garcias got fined for planting marigolds instead of roses. Mrs. Wilson, who'd lived here over 30 years, was told her bird feeder was 2 inches too tall. She's on a power trip, Jackson said, and no one knows how to stop her. But someone was trying. Dad. Each night, he buried himself in property maps, bylaws, and financial records. And each day, more neighbors showed up at our door with their own horror stories. Dr. Patel, Mrs. Wilson, the Garcias, the Smiths. I was in surgery, Dr. Patel said. The delivery box sat on my porch 4 hours. I got fined. They're my only company, Mrs. Wilson whispered, near tears, and she says my feeders attract vermin. Dad listened, took notes, then finally said, last year, the HOA collected $5,000 in fines. Total. Under Karen, $122,000. In just 2 months, gasps. But that's not all. Bylaws say fine money must go to community improvements, but the money isn't showing up in the official accounts. What does that mean? Someone asked. It means, Dad said, choosing his words, the money may be going elsewhere. And with a $1.2 million loan pending, that's a serious problem. What can we do? Mr. Jackson asked. As part of the review, I've requested a full audit of HOA finances, Dad said. Karen won't know it's me, but the bank is going to take a very close look. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Zach. Oh my God. Check the neighborhood Facebook page. Karen had posted a long rant accusing unnamed residents of ignoring standards and lowering property values. No names, but we all knew. She's trying to turn the neighborhood against us, Mom said. Dad stayed calm. She's building a record, and that helps us. That afternoon, I walked Max past Diane's house, Karen's best friend. Parked in the driveway, a giant RV rule violation, documented. That night, Dad laid out his plan. The next HOA board meeting is Tuesday, he said. We're going, and we won't be alone. Tuesday. The community center was packed. Normally, a handful of retirees showed up. This time, standing room only. Karen's smile faded as she scanned the crowd. She opened the meeting briskly. Regarding the renovation project, the loan is proceeding as expected. Moving on. "Excuse me," Dad said, standing. "As a community member, I'd like details about the loan." Karen bristled. "The details are confidential." "Actually," Dad replied calmly, "since our shared property is collateral, the members are entitled to full disclosure. It's in the bylaws." Silence. "We're borrowing $1.2 million from First National Bank," Karen finally said. "The application is under review." "And what's the status?" Dad asked. "There have been some documentation requests, just red tape. And the fines," he continued. "Your quarterly statement says $3,200, but our street alone has paid more." "They haven't been processed yet," Karen said quickly. "That's odd," someone shouted. "I paid 8 weeks ago." "You cashed my check the next day," another yelled. Buzz filled the room. Voices, whispers. Karen banged her gavel. "This meeting is adjourned." Afterward, she cornered Dad. "I don't know what game you're playing, Reynolds," she hissed, "but you're making a powerful enemy." "I'm not playing games," Dad said evenly, "just making sure we all follow the rules." That night, our doorbell rang. Midnight. I peeked through the blinds. A figure moved in our yard, flashlight in hand. The motion sensor lit up. It was Karen. She froze, then ran to her car and sped away. The next morning, our garden was trashed. Plants uprooted, dirt everywhere. Taped to our door. Citation: landscaping debris, $200 fine. But Karen had made a mistake. The doorbell camera caught everything. And that same day, a thick folder landed on Dad's desk, the official HOA loan file. He brought it home, spread it across the table, and smiled. "Guess whose signature is on every financial statement?" I looked up, and I smiled too, because Karen Matthews had no idea who she'd just messed with.